Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu salam ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi barakatuh. Lil ikwani wa akhwati fi din. Assalamu mani taba huda. Lil ikwani wa akhwati fi Afrika wa Europa wa America wa Caribbean wa kulli makan. Halin wa salin bikum. How you doing today, my brothers and sisters, those who will view this in the future? I am going to embark on a series of talks about, again, Africa, my favorite topic outside of Islam. And Ramadan Kareem Mubarak is coming very, very shortly for all of us, inshallah ta'ala. And I will take this time to highlight some of our illustrious ancestors in the past, because I believe it's important that we should always venerate those who became before us, who were strong Muslimin. So I will do that. Today's topic, brothers and sisters, is a last resort, talking about the conflict in the Sahel region. As we all know, the Sahel is mired in a lot of banditry, a lot of other criminal activity, Mujahideen, fi sabili Allah ta'ala, and inept governance and ethnic conflicts. And so I'm going to talk about a solution, because we have a problem with the Mujahideen, who are heavily armed and are making their way westward and north and to the east. We know they're already in Nigeria. We know they're already in the Cameroons. We know they have made their entry into Chad. So I'm going to talk about what can we do to stop what has happened and bring forth peace and security in the Sahel region. Because this region in itself could be a catalyst for other revolts or insurgencies, even in the north. So we have to do something, and everybody's watching us. If we can bring our brothers to the table and bring peace, and we can stop the criminal elements of our Mujahideen groups who are not acting fi sabilillah. They're not doing that anymore. Now they become banned criminals, kidnapping, robbing, becoming muharaba. Hear me talking about this word before in the past, where they waylay people in the desert and take their wealth and so forth, so kidnap their children, their daughters, force marriage upon them, and so forth, so on. So I will embark on this, and we will look at what this proposal is. As you see here, this is the map of Garib Afrika, or West Africa. But you see something here in green. I have this written in the Arabic language, because that's the language that is spoken here in Maghreb, where I live. And this is the language that I basically speak here as well in the Maghreb region. And here in the green, you see the Emirat Islamiyah. This is written in Arabic, and it's in the green. This is encompassing Niger and Burkina Faso. We're talking about an emirate, an Islamic emirate, that may be a viable solution at the last resort to bring all of these Mujahideen groups to the table and to give them plots of land in their own country where they can live under the Sharia, because this is one of their their calling cards, is that they don't want to live no more under the democratic ways and means. They don't want that anymore. They don't want to live in that. They have been unjustly dealt with, and so and also many of them have been burnt out. Their villages burnt out, and so they joined these groups in an effort to protect themselves. But now we know that these groups are being funded heavily, and we also know they're starting to receive foreign fighters, meaning Muslims coming from other regions and other areas, and maybe even outside of Africa, to join these groups. And we're not nowhere close to settling this problem. And we have brilliant statesmen here in Africa who are trying to do their best to find causes, find reasons and ways and means to bring peace and to stop the Mujahideen from spreading elsewhere. This is a viable solution in itself, meaning that they would have their own sovereignty. And I'll get into this. This is, again, a viable solution for the region in the Sahel region, because we have no clues on what we're going to do next. And the bullet is being used as a method to bring the Mujahideen down to the knees. It's not going to happen, brothers and sisters. If you didn't learn anything, you see what the Afghanistan model was. You see what the Western forces spend billions, trillions to go to defeat a band of Muslims who wanted to operate under the Sharia, and they won. So we have to look at this model, and we have to stop to look to the West for the answers. They don't have the answers. Only thing they want to do, they have their objective. One, to stop Islam. Second, to take the natural resources. Three, to control Africa as they have been for 400 years. So we look at this and ask the question, how can we do this? The victory in the Sahel, the establishment of an Islamic emirate, codified by the Sahel governments, ratified by the AU, and strengthened by the ulama and their fatwas. Here, the brothers will get together and we're talking about hypotheticals. We're talking about the last resort again. They would get together and they would decide on how they would do this. If we can bring the brothers to peace and the Mujahideen groups unite, because many of them are uniting, brothers and sisters. Not all of them yet, but many of them are uniting. And if they unite under one emir, watch out. I've been saying that. Watch out, because they're being heavily funded. And one of the leaders of one of the groups spoke on France 24, I believe it was. And he talked about the Sahel region. And he said, look, we're receiving Mujahideen fighters from all over the place. Now, some may laugh and say, well, I don't know about all this. The Americans laughed at one time too, when, remember, over the Middle East there, Islamic State, remember them? You remember them? They're still running around here and there. But they thought that when they called to jihad, that nobody would show up. And what happened? They did. So no one's laughing at that anymore. When Mujahideen groups are calling out for jihad, thinking that no one's going to come to assist them, they're already receiving assistance. You see how deadly the situation is, brothers and sisters? This is no joke. And they're getting more and more powerful. They're heavily armed. And they're operating in the Sahara, which is very difficult to navigate. So here we would have the entities to get together and to form a coalition to bring peace. And we would then have a viable option into bringing peace in Sahel once and for all. Could this be possible? Yes, it could. This would end endless cycles of violence, marauding, murder, disenfranchisement. Without this option, the Mujahideen groups will continue their path. Brothers and sisters, as we speak right now, are we talking right now? We're listening to what I'm saying. They are continuing. It's a deadly path. It's a deadly path. And there's no relief in sight. The Sahel governments and security forces don't have a clue in quelling the Mujahideen. They don't. As they are growing, recruitment is up. Brothers and sisters, nobody's laughing at that anymore. The Western government used to laugh and say, oh no, the Muslims they won't, when someone calls for jihad, nobody will come to it. They don't say that anymore because they know that the Muslims worldwide will start to come. They underestimated the zeal of most Muslims. We're not talking about right or wrong in this situation here. We're not talking about under the Sharia and what our Prophet ﷺ said about issues like this. We're only talking about what is happening on the ground today now. Fighters are coming from a multitude of places. Brothers and sisters, they're coming. Okay? They're coming many places. And as the situation worsen, then we have more kidnappings, more fire bombings, and whatnot. I'm not here to defend. I will not defend the Western forces. I'm not here for that. Anyone knows they don't belong here. I say that. They don't belong here. This is Africa. Yes, they've been here 400 years doing what they're supposed to be doing, but they're doing something that is wrong because they are not equal players in this. They're here as marauders. They're here as crusaders, and they're here to keep the African continent at bay, for them to rule us and to take our resources for pennies or nothing at all. So I'm not defending them in this situation. I'm not defending them. That's not what I'm saying here. But we have no clue on how we can quell the violence. We have a hard time finding where they're at because the Sahara is massive, running from Morocco all the way to southern part of Egypt. It's massive. The Sahel governments have the answers right in front of them. And it's not the security agreements with the West. These security agreements have proven to be inept and clueless. Now, some will say, well, hey, man, the West has got the firepower. Oh, yes, no doubt. They have all of the high-tech military madness that you can think of. Every types of bombs, aerial surveillance, and so forth and so on. Yet, they seem to capture these people and beat them. I'll get into a little bit of that on why perhaps it is. And we see under their tutelage, the Mujahideen groups have skyrocketed, brothers and sisters, from little small bands here to big full-fledged armies. And these people are ruthless. These are hardened Muslims. So this is what you're dealing with now. And all of us, I can say, you heard me say many times, the Muslims should not join groups that are in conflict with the Sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ. Okay, we have to be very careful of that. And we also have this hadith. You remember the Prophet ﷺ gave us this hadith, again, a guidance for all of us. He said there'll be 73 Islamic groups appear. 72 will be wayward. You see? So you have to be very careful about what you join to make sure that it's within the Sunnah. But you have to ask the question, especially my Fulani brothers who are sitting in villages or who are manning their cattle and they're killed. And the cattle are killed or stolen from them. Or how about in some of the remote villages, They are raided, their women ravaged, their daughters taken, and forced marriages. So how can we sit and tell this man, Muhammad, who's lost his family and his village, and the Mujahideen call, and we tell him don't go join them, when the government forces are not caring about what happened to him. The security forces are not caring about what happened to him. The West doesn't care about what happened to him. He complains and says, look, where were you at? They came here and they stayed here 3 days, and they marauded our village and killed most of the men. They took our women and ravaged our daughters. When they see there's no hope in this, and here's comes the Mujahideen coming. So they go join them out of protection and safety. See, this is the element that no one talks about. What is right and wrong? You see? And and we have to talk about that. Yes, we see the aftermath of but what's causing Mujahideen groups to be this ruthless? We have to ask that question, brothers and sisters. Why are people joining them? See, this is things that we have to ask. We can't just look at one side of this and say, okay, the Mujahideen, they just did this, the Mujahideen just did that. But what caused the Mujahideen? What caused them? What was our actions that caused that? Why did all these young men from the Fulbe community begin to join these groups, or from the Hausa community begin to join these groups? Did they just wake up out of bed and say, well, I'm going to do this? No. Most of them were driven to it, or some were forced into it as well. They had to pick. Either you go to a Mujahideen group. If you didn't, you said no to them, you would be murdered. If the government forces come, security forces come, and they tell you, well, we don't want you to do this, and they end up killing you, see? So you're in a bad situation. This is what has happened to a lot of our Fulbe community brothers. Why is this insurgency so strong? The Sahel region has been in constant, vibrant jihad since 7/11, brothers and sisters. Since 7/11. The Fulani being the catalyst and the model for this jihad, because it was them that went into Andalus, as we know, modern day Spain. And there's others too, which I will cover. So when they became first converts, when Islam began pushing south of the Sahara, the messengers who were conveying Islam ran into the Fulbe community in the southern parts of the Sahara. And our brothers took the religion hard and didn't play with it. And then when they called a jihad to go into Andalus, the famed ancestral brother Moroccan came and asked for their assistance. And you heard me on my program talking about that and what happened in this situation. So they've been in constant jihad since this time, brothers and sisters. They've been the catalyst of the 5 great sultanates of Morocco. So the Fulani community has been very, very busy since 7/11, and it hasn't stopped now. Even to modern times, they're still busy today. There were main participants in the conquest of Andalus, as you heard me say, but along also are brothers that we don't talk too much about: the Bambara, the Mandinka, the Senike, the Hapupular, the Wolof from the Senegambia region. All of them participated in this jihad. And from this time, from 7/11 on, these groups have been involved in jihad after jihad, all the way until our glorious period was about the 13th century, talking about West Africa, Gharib, Ifriqiya, and Arabic. West Africa, about the 13th century to near the 18th century, was our glory days, basically, in that period of time. See, so, and you see the same participants in those glory periods, the 1300s to about near the 1800s. They were involved in this. See, so, brother, sister, when you ask the question, say, well, I don't understand why they're doing this. You go back to 7/11 AD. They have not stopped. They have been trying to bring Islam, the right Islam, to the region since about Okay, I'm not going to say 7-Eleven. Well, no, we can say that because they've been fighting. About 7-Eleven, they have been fighting to bring the Islam that is the under the Prophet Islam as he has directed to the masses in West Africa. This is a fact. They've tried that. This is why, who are the leading scholars in Ghana, Ifriqiya? The Fulani. See, so, and our House of Brothers are right behind us. As you heard me say, they established the 5 great Moroccan sultanates, along with the Tuareg and Amazigh. By the 13th century, they were participating in numerous rounds of sultanates in West Africa as well. So you look at this. Our Fulani brothers mainly went up to the north and formed sultanates in Morocco. And those sultanates in Morocco lasted until today. It's our king here in Morocco. His lineage goes back to Sultan Rashid, the Alawin, and he was most likely Fulani himself. So the Fulani heritage here in Morocco is great, as you heard me talk about. All my relatives that I have here in Morocco all have Fulani heritage. All, every cousin I have here, and which is in the hundreds, all have Fulani heritage. That's right, Fulani heritage. The Islamic scholarship is well noted from the 700s AD to the present. As we said that, professors in the famed Timbuktu, traveling across the Sahara, established settlements of every Sahel region and beyond. We had this, especially our Fulani brothers, because they have navigated Sahara for centuries upon centuries. And this is why I'm saying to you, you look at why you push them, what happens? They go to jihad, because this is what they know. This has been handed down. And this is the understatement that nobody talks about. Because we only hear of the Western versions on what is happening in the Sahel region. But we're not looking at why these people are so vicious and why they fight so much. When they are pushed, why they go and hit the desert and begin to fight. Well, look back at 700 AD. They've been doing this, brothers and sisters. This has been going on for almost about 1400 years. See? So you have to understand that. And that's why I said the bullet is not the answer. If it was the answer, it would have stopped the Mujahideen groups in around about the 8th, 9th, 10th century. It would have stopped them, but they didn't. The Europeans couldn't stop them at that time. Yes, they colonized Africa, but they did not stop. They still had resistance. It didn't stop. And Fulanis were resisting as well. See? So there's a lot of talk that needs to be talked about in reference to this area. You can see that the jihad is not new, which we heard me say. When the Bambara, the Seniki, the Fulani, the Hausa, the Mandinka, the Wolof, and other groups, when they are wronged, they take to the desert and begin to fight. And and you look at the catalyst to the Mujahideen today, you see what has happened. They were grossly wronged. Inept governance, injustice and wanton murder, okay, killing their kinfolk, robbing their village and burning out their villages, taking their daughters. These type of stuff like this has caused what the problem we have in the Sahel today. And this is why we have these deadly insurgencies. And you have to ask the question, my dear brothers, especially my African-American brothers and the Caribbean brothers. What if some people came to your city where you live and they burnt it out and they took your wife and they took your daughter? What would you do? Some would take arms. Brothers I know in Compton, where I grew up in Compton, California, they would take arms and go to fight. This is what is happening now. They took up arms to go fight. When the desire for subhanahu wa ta'ala's governance is strong, the jihad is awakened. They're sleepy. And then suddenly the government forces who are backed by the Western forces begin to do their evil. And this is what happens. The jihad is awakened. And when injustice against the Fulani and the Hausa and the Tuareg and the Amazigh, against the Bambara, against all of the noted Mujahideen fighters of our ancestral brothers from these groups, they still fight back. And jihad is initiated and so forth. And the thing that, again, brothers and sisters, we have to look at, what do these Mujahideen groups want? Are they crusaders? They want a whole bunch of land so they can be rich? No, they don't want that. You hear them say this many times. They don't want that. But they don't want to live under democracy, because democracy is an alien concept here in Africa. It's not African. It's Tuba. We have our forms of governance even in ancient times before Islam came. We had our shura council. We had the king of the village, and we had shura councils, and we had a system of governance. That system of governance overall is better than what you see today. You see worldwide famine. You see worldwide banks are falling, especially in the United States. If anyone's been reading, you see what's going on in the United States. The banks are falling because of democracy. They don't want to live under that. And when the government forces come, they want to bring the Mujahideen who want the Sharia Allah Ta'ala, and they want to bring them to democratic ways and means. It's not going to work, brothers and sisters. They don't want that. You heard them say 1,000 times. They don't want that. They want to live under the Sharia law because they know democracy doesn't work. And we know it doesn't work. So the Sahel governments must act to quell the violence. But they don't, because they add to the violence because the soldiers are poorly trained. They're not paid very well. So they go into these villages and they are given immunity and they do what they want to do. And we have problems. They're wicked. And here's the problem too. Their wicked and morbid associations with the Western powers must be stopped. If you want to stop the stuff that's going on in the Sahel, this association has to be stopped because it's not fruitful for the Africans. It only benefits the Tuba. It doesn't benefit the Africans. It doesn't. And as we speak right now, here's the thing that angers me when I hear the West talk as they talk. They only concentrate on Mujahideen as though they woke up, took up guns, and that's it. They played an instrumental part in why the Mujahideen are vicious as they are, because what they have done and who they have backed in order to do the things they did to the Fulani villages and the community and to the Hausa brothers, and what they have done elsewhere to the Tuareg and other places, and in Mali and so forth and so on. This type of wicked association has caused that. So the Muslims wage jihad and use this association between our governments and the West as a vehicle, a calling card. And when the Muslims worldwide start to hear about this, they're starting to come. They're not going to the Middle East, quote unquote, Jazira Arab anymore. They're coming into Africa. Now we get into it. The creation of the Islamic Emirate could be done. And we would have ground rules set here in Africa among the brothers. And it could be done. It could be done. As we get into it now, the warring factions will be brought together. Who would bring the warring factions? A Tubab? No. Our scholars. We have brilliant scholars who are respected by these Mujahideen groups, like Sheikh Ahmed Gumi of Nigeria. He's one of them. He's highly respected. Matter of fact, he's mediated in some of these conflicts that's happened in North Africa. okay, with the Fulani. And he's got them to stop, many of them to stop robbing and marauding and so forth and so on. We have brilliant, brilliant scholars like him. He can bring, we can have a table, a round table of respected scholars, the ulama. They'll come and bring all the factions together. It can be done, but the West doesn't want that. No, no, brothers and sisters. They'll fight for that. They'll kill to keep that from happening because of their morbid control. They want this, they want to keep Africa for themselves. They don't want to see you and me prosper here. They want us to bow down to them on their feet where they can take our riches and so forth and so on and be control over us as though we were still slaves. So the warring factions could be brought together by ulama and fuqaha. They could. And agreements with the binding understanding with the Sahel governments. The second part, now we brought a truce. The Mujahideen has stopped now marauding. They have stopped raiding. They have stopped making ambushes. And now here's some agreements. The Sahel government bring their representatives and we start to get an agreement down. This is viable. But the problem with our Sahel governments is they're under the thumb of the French, the British, and the Americans, and now the Russians. The Russians are more inclined to allow this to kind of take place, but the other ones are not. This understanding assures peace and security with the Sahel governments. The Sahel governments will not have to be spending their GAP to go after Mujahideen because the raiding would stop. The North African governments and the AU, all this, we would have a security agreement, and the AU would be their governing body, and we would have these outstanding MOUs, so to speak, and security pact agreements, and we could bring peace to the Sahel region. The prohibition of cross-border raids and marauding would be curtailed. That's important, brothers and sisters. Yeah, maybe not for those who's sitting in Los Angeles or who's sitting in Paris or who's sitting in London, but for the people in the Sahel region, this is important because these cross-border raids and marauding is going on and kidnapping is deadly. We'll get into this part here now too. The new emirate will be allowed Islamic governance. We already have this in northern part of Nigeria and it works good. We already have a model that it works. We know that Islamic governments we know that financing the governments, we know it works. We know that. That's why the West tries to stop it because they know it works and it puts them out. They cannot come to be the head of, because under the Sharia, no kafir is going to be head of nothing. And we know that under our law. So assuring that the Quranic law will be evenly instituted, this is important. If we do have Sharia law, we have to make sure that it's according to modern times, not back in the 7th century. It's dynamic to where we use what we have and we make ijtihad to make new things under the Sharia in order to accommodate the modern times. We have internet, we have cars. They didn't have cars and stuff in the 7th century, right? Have internet. There's other things that we have in modern times. Now we have to have innovative laws in order to cover that, you see? So it has to be evenly distributed. Judges, imams, security police, which would be the Hezbollah police who enforce the Sharia, and only duly qualified act under subhanahu wa ta'ala's religion. And when this new emirate will be formed, we will bring in the judges. We have brilliant judges. We have brilliant imams too, as security specialists. We have that. We have that. See, so this is a viable option in the last resort if we can't come to any other ways and means of stopping the violence. There will be no expansionism and annexing of neighbors. Look, this is important, brothers and sisters. as you remember when we showed this here, see Burkina Faso and Nigeria, and excuse me, Niger in the green, this is what the new Islamic Emirate would encompass. They will not be able to use jihad as an excuse to go after Chad, which you see to your right, or go into Nigeria, to Algeria, which is to your north, up here to the right, to the north, and Mali, and then you have Mauritania further to the left, as you see on here, and then you see Al Maghreb, which is where I live, there in the left-hand corner. And this is all written in Arabic, as you see here. And you have Nigeria, which is to the south. All of these border raids will stop. There's no annexing. There's no annexing of neighboring states. Okay, just because they're mad at Mali, they can't go into Mali and try to take it over. We would have MOUs and security agreements stopping that. And they would have to give their pledges that they won't do this. And we would have judges, and we'll have assured consuls inside the emirate to prevent this. So again, now here's the other part. Nor aiding and abetting to overthrow Sahel states. The Mujahideen groups who now have got an emirate, they have got an emir who's governing, a sultan who's governing their land. They cannot go into Nigeria. They can't go into Mali or Mauritania or Al Maghreb, or they can't go over to the right where you see Chad. And they can't go there and start to firm a revolt by funding revolts to topple the governments. They'll be forbidden from doing that. And they'll do this to expand the Islamic Empire. We're going to stop that. We don't want them to do that. We're giving them these plots of land here, so they'll stay there, and they'll be able to operate in peace under the Sharia. But they can't go to annex any of the parts like what's going on between Russia and Ukraine. You can't have that. The Sahel states will be instrumental in trying to, okay. Now, this is the other part of this. We go reciprocating this. The Sahel states can't go and be instrumental in trying to overthrow the new Islamic Emirate. So we have them also. They'll be forbidden from doing that. Nor can they go into cahoots with the Western powers to topple the Emirate, which we know they may do. But we're trying to stop them. We say, no, look, they're operating in peace. As you look at Afghanistan today, brothers and sisters, you see similar agreements like this. Afghanistan's not trying to annex anything else. They're staying only within their boundaries. This is what we want in this emirate here. We want them to stay in their boundaries and everything. But we don't want the Sahelan states, Chad, we don't want to see Mauritania, we don't want to see Mali and so forth and so on, Nigeria plot with the West in order to overthrow them. We always have this happen. This is why we're marred in all kind of conflicts, because the West get mad at some leader and they overthrow them. Look at Libya. It's still reeling today after they killed Gaddafi. Look at Libya today. Look at some of the Sahelan states. Look what's happening like down in West Africa. They overthrow and everything goes into chaos. The emirate would be funded solely by Islamic donors. This is important, brothers and sisters, because under the Sharia, they can't take the loans from the West. Why? Because they're full of riba. Riba interest, we don't do that. It is strictly forbidden. We cannot have riba-based loans. The IMF and others, Western powers, will come in and give a predatory loan that is so outrageous that no one can pay it back. They're forbidden. We have rich Islamic states that can help to fund the new Islamic Emirate. We will get that from them and other African states too, who want to see them prosper. Because if they prosper, they prosper. If they're in peace, if the emirate is doing well, they will do well as it also. And they would help to build the infrastructure. What is happening in Afghanistan is money strapped. And they're I don't know all what's going on, everything in there, but we know that there's certain loans. Those loans are predatory. They're strictly forbidden by Muslims to take them. We can't pay them back. And this is what gets the African states in trouble. They take this loan and they can't pay the money back. And the West come back and say, okay, you know what? I'll take 3/4 of your country. I'll start to run that behind the scenes. Or we'll take over your airports and we'll take over your seaports. We'll take 35 to 40% of your fishing lines. See, this is what happens. And this is by design. So this would be, as I said, no predatory loans from the non-Muslim entities. No, it's out. No, none. We take nothing from the West. We take nothing from them because they will not do anything to help us. They will not. They will be there to try to destroy because they don't want to see Africa, period, prosper. They want to govern us and rule us, and they don't want to see us prosper. The emirate would be bounded by fatwas. Again, the Mujahideen, no, we are bounded by the fatwas. Fatwas are the rulings given by our religious bodies. These fatwas, according to the Quran and Sunnah. Now, if we have disputes, they'll be handled in state. They don't run to Europe, to the kuffar, to handle their problems. They cannot, brothers and sisters, they cannot. They have to handle it according to the Sharia. We have bodies to do this. If they can't, we bring in Muslims from Saudi Arabia. We're bringing Muslims from Ghana. We're bringing Muslims from Mauritius or from the Maldives or whatever, from Maghreb. We're bringing Muslims to help to alleviate a dispute within the state. If that doesn't work, then the Sahel states will come to participate to stop anything to develop. We don't want to see them toppled. We don't want to see revolt. We don't want to see mass looting. Why? Because if this happens, then the Muslims begin to do what? They'll run into Mali for safety. They'll run into Mauritania for safety. They'll start to run into Nigeria for safety. See, we don't want that. So we're trying to use all our resources inside Africa to keep to quell any problems inside this new emirate. And this would be important. And if disagreements still abound, then we get the AU and other meaningful Muslim scholars, judges, etc., to help mediate. This is all viable. We do not need the French to come. We don't need the Americans. We don't need the British to come in to try to mediate problems between Africans. Okay, because it doesn't work. And it's against our Sharia anyway. So we have the AU who come in also, and they use their means and so forth to help to mediate problems. Number 11, there will be no Western powers interfering in MOUs. The West come in, the first thing they want to do is how they can rule over the Islamic Emirate, because there's oil reserves, there's other minerals. They want that. And they want to be able to get it for pennies or free. So their ambition is not to be equal partners. There is to take, as they've been doing for 400 years, and to indirectly rule Africa, which they're doing today. So ensuring their eventual control with the state. We don't want to see the Muslims, the new emirate, under the Western powers. That's not going to work. You're going to have strife. Because the Muslims, the fundamentalist Muslims inside and others disenfranchised Muslims inside the emirate will begin to rebel, and we'll have mass migration out of the state and putting pressure on the Sahel states to feed these people who are running out, the Muslims who are running out, to find safety because of the conflict within the new emirate. We don't want to see that happen, brothers and sisters. So you got to keep the Western powers out of it. Why take Burkina Faso and Niger? Now you say, well, I don't know about this. You look at Burkina Faso, Niger, this would be a perfect location for it because they're fledgling states. They're not doing well. They have not done well. And this would be a viable place for that. And again, we're talking about hypotheticals. We're not, I'm not advocating it. I'm just talking about hypotheticals in the last resort. We can have this. Here's to your right is Niger, and going further down is Burkina Faso. this would be a viable place for that, because those states are in bad shape. They have poorness, brothers and sisters. They are marred into many things. And the Mujahideen are already in there. And this would be an ideal place. The Mujahideen are controlling vast stretches of both states. They are already. They're already there. And this areas are considered launching pads for ground operations. They're going cross-border. They're using this area where we can have the new emirate to make operations against Nigeria and against the Sahel states. And the marauding of the nearby states, see this again, they use this area because of the vast Sahara that they have. It's mysterious, majestic, and deadly. The Sahara is. It's unforgiving. It's beauty, but the beauty is overwhelmed by the dangers in it, brothers and sisters. And this landscape is ideal for Mujahideen fighters to hide in it. And sometimes you don't even see them coming. Ask the Americans what happened when they got ambushed and they killed. Remember, I forgot how many years ago it was when they went into, I guess, in Niger. Remember that in Niger they went there and they got ambushed. The French have been ambushed many times in other places. They don't see these guys coming because there's some magnetic forces that are there in the Sahara. And I can't explain that. I've been there. I'm telling you now, there's when you go inside of it, there's something about it that I can't explain it to you, brothers and sisters. Okay, I can't explain it to you. But I have a different. It's like my molecules. Things are different in my body when I go into the Sahara. I saw that. Even my prayer, I feel it. It's like something. I can't explain that feeling about that. And I can see how anybody, because they have sand dunes, they have places where you can hide and you can't see them. And suddenly look, ask the Americans what happened in Niger. These brothers came out of nowhere and ambushed them because it's easy to hide there. This is what I'm talking about, this place here, why the Sahara is so deadly. And the Mujahideen got a perfect place. It's like Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a good place for Mujahideen because of the hills and mountains and vast valleys and so forth. You can hide. The Sahara is the same way. That's why one reason why you can't defeat them. The jihad is spreading, brothers and sisters, northwards as we speak now. They're going everywhere, and we have an outstanding brother, ambassador, who's working on this, who's giving us information. And I follow him, and he's an outstanding brother and very educated and deeply committed to peace in the Sahel region. And this Ambassador Mendawa, he is outstanding brother, and he's trying to find ways and also is giving us information on what's going on in the Sahel region. And I really appreciate his work. These attacks are starting to happen more. Kidnappings and ambushes are commonplace, brothers and sisters. There are no recommendations to quell this insurgencies. We don't have it. So we have to have something to start to bring us to the table. We have to do something here in Africa to stop this. The Western powers and those African states doing their bidding believe that the bullet is the best way. It is not. You see, we can't stop these guys. You may stop one small group here and there, but there's others that come about. I mean, they're growing, brothers and sisters. They are growing, and they're everywhere. And it's not working. The bullet is not working. These groups are enjoying a windfall of recruits. They're coming. I mean, they're coming from everywhere. And financing. We got Muslims financing these things. Yes. And I remember there was a report about one, I won't get into it now. He was from Saudi Arabia, but he was, I think, in England or something like this. And they were trying to track him. And they were said that he was one of the donors of one of the couple of groups there in the Sahel region. See, so we know they're being financed because you have to ask the question, how can a village, a poor village, say some full big community brothers who are managing cattle, suddenly after about 1 year come up with hundreds and hundreds of desert vehicles, I forgot what you call them, for the desert and so forth. Okay, those kind of vehicles like this, hundreds of them. Where did they get the money when they were just herding cattle? Okay, or they were pastors, so forth, or they were in villages, they were farmers, and suddenly they became Mujahideen, and now they're manning 200 to 300, sometimes 400 trucks. Where did they get their money from? See, the Western powers of Sahel states cannot defeat them since they are operating this. Now we're going to get into something, brothers and sisters. I'm a Muslim. I'm going to get into this, and I go by the Quran and the Sunnah. I know, and you see Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's words. You look at our scholars as they have gotten the tafsir, the understanding of these verses. And we'll get into this here like this. I just talked about this verse here about 2 weeks ago or so. Since these groups are operating under the Sharia, but they are wayward, okay? Perhaps Surah 4, verse 141 may be applying here. Subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in this verse, وَلَنْ أَشْعَلَ اللَّهُ the kafirina ala mu'minina sabil. He will not allow, he said in this verse, Sadaqallah al-Din. He said in this verse, I will not let the ways of the disbelievers over their ways to triumph over the Muslims. That's what this verse said. So you look at this and see the correlation between this. But again, you see, Allah, I'm saying here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best here. He knows best if this is the case now. But I'm making a pitch to say one verse in the Quran, okay, that I know that may apply here is this verse here. And why they're not being defeated. Because we know that the Western forces and some of our governments who use the Western governments in order to govern us, and they're applying this way over us, Subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, I ain't having that. So he's told this verse here, and our prophet has explained it, and we have scholars of every age talked about this verse. He's not going to allow that. He's not going to allow the disbelievers to win. Now you say, well, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. The Americans won here, the British won over here, the French won over here. Yes. Now you go to Surah 9, okay, verse 112. Subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the same thing again. Here he says, yes, there's the disbeliever armies, the non-Muslim people will have minor victories here. And you heard me talk about this verse also. Subhanahu wa ta'ala uses two words in this verse. One meaning a manifest victory for Muslims, and the other one means insignificant victories. Subhanahu wa ta'ala said this in Surah 9, verse 112. These may apply in this situation why we can't get a handle on them. See? But Allah alam, I'm only saying what I think. I have no way of knowing because this is with Subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is an alternative suggestion, brothers and sisters. I'm not pushing for it. I'm not saying, yes, we should have it. I'm not saying that this is the only way. No, I'm only giving you alternative suggestions because we have to do something. The bullet is not working and it's not going to work. You heard me talk about Surah 4, verse 141, Surah 9, verse 112. It's not going to work. In order to bring peace, moreover, we cannot achieve peace and security without fresh ideas and more viable input, especially from our ulama. They are shut out of this. And we run to the Tubab who are disbelievers to ask them for their input and what we should do. 400 years, we're still doing that. And they don't have answers. Only thing they have answers for is the bullet. That's all. And it's not working. It didn't work in Afghanistan either, did it? Look at all the money they spent. all the American lives they lost. The French in the Sahel region, look at all the lives they lost. What have they accomplished? They've had a couple of victories here, over there, but that's it. And here's the paradox of this, brothers and sisters, which angers me a lot. The West, the French, the British, the Americans concentrate on the Mujahideen. But what else is going on in the Sahel region? The trafficking of African women. We still have this today, brothers, and it's a lucrative business. Who do you think is behind it? You, me, black faces? No, we're only the people who go, we're the low workers down in the, we're the conglomerates. They're not sitting in Ghana. The conglomerates are sitting in Europe and the United States. They're trafficking. And if you remember right here, 6 years, maybe 6 years ago, they caught in the Sahara, in Mali, the Mujahideen caught these two bastards who were trafficking our women and executed them, and the French were upset over it. They found these women half dead going across the Sahara. And these two Frenchmen who were traffickers, who, you know, taking our women into Europe and maybe into the Middle East, of Jazira Arab, that's what it's called. And they got them and executed them. See, so this is something, again, we have to have fresh ideas and input in order to stop this. I don't recommend this approach, meaning in the sense of saying that the emirate is viable. But we have to put everything on the table, brothers and sisters. This is our continent. This is our brothers. They're not from the outer space. They're Africans. So we have to find out, we have to do something to stop the violence Africans on Africans. We have to do something. Both have grievances. Both have legitimate claims. We have to find some ways to mediate, to bring brothers together to stop this so we can live in peace. And we have brilliant statesmen, as you heard me say earlier here, who's trying to do this. But we don't have enough support from them. So the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ kind of stops us in this regard. Because remember I said 73, remember? 73 what? Groups, Islamic groups. And so those 72, the 72 who are wayward are in trouble with subhanahu wa ta'ala, you see? So that the emirate may be formed by one of the 72 groups. You see, this is my reasoning behind that. And that's why I'm saying this is the only alternative if we have nothing else left. Because as these guys get stronger and more deadlier and more financed and more heavily armed, we better be looking for some viable actions. I mean, we better be looking for it because the bullet is not working. And second part of it, reason why this option is not number one in my heart, because the believers, we only have a few of us and we're weakened because we don't have support. The two Western powers are strong right now. They've been strong. So this is, again, this option is for the last resort. And I want you to understand that. I'm not pushing that this is the only, it is not. This is a last resort, but this is something we should talk about. The Western powers are against Islam and subhanahu wa ta'ala's governance. This is a stumbling block. The Mujahideen won't listen to anybody, on any of us who come with democratic ways and means, and they come with a two-bob face to a meeting. It's not going to work. They're not going to accept that. See, so this is why I said, brothers and sisters, we have to find ways and means to bring our brothers to the table. But we have to bring the right brothers to the table in order to mediate. And Western powers is not it. This is the last resort that I'm advocating here. Surely if the Mujahideen continue to grow, become more ruthless, and they begin to take vast areas, we better start talking about something, giving them some homeland or do something, because this conflict is going to reach all the way into North Africa, because North Africa is right in front of them as well. And we start doing that, and they start to go further south and disrupting the Sahel governments. And they start moving further east into more into Cameroon. and maybe even in troubled Sudan, in southern Sudan. It's a beautiful place, but it's a place now marred in poverty and corruption. The Mujahideen could go in there and cause a lot of havoc, brothers and sisters. Okay? A lot of havoc. You see what I'm talking about? I'm not a diplomat. I'm just a Muslim. But I see some things, and I'm a historian of African history. I graduated with that degree. So I'm not just talking out of my mouth. I'm talking from experience and from my knowledge and my history of what I know of Africa, which I graduated with this degree about African history. So I'm giving these options in order for us to think about that. But Subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, knows what's best in all things. And so we have to rely on his judgment and what he determines the best course of action in the Sahel region. But surely, brothers and sisters, the West is not the answer. They are not the answer. We've seen that. And we have to find other means and methods in order to quell this violence. So my brothers and sisters, I was long today, and this is a special talk, talking about the Sahel region. And I'm hoping that you ponder my words today. And I'm not here to anger anyone, because maybe people have other ideas. Well, you bring forth those ideas. I'm bringing forth an idea here because I want to stop the terror that's going on there in the Sahel. I want to stop it. How would you, like you, me and you, we're staying, how would you sleep at night knowing your village is vulnerable to a raid from Mujahideen groups? And they come and take my son to force him in the army, or they take my daughters to be forced marriage. And then when I see my daughter a year or 2 years later, she's with 2 children. See, I want to stop that. Even though I don't live there in northern Nigeria, or I don't live in Mali, see? But I still feel for my brothers because they're Africans. They're not aliens, they're Africans. And so I want to do what I can. And the only thing I can do is talk about these issues, because I have no power, anything like this. I can only talk. And that's one of our conditions that we have in the Sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ, talking about this, about a wrong, how we correct it. So I'm giving you those options. Okay, my brothers and sisters, I hope you got something out of this. If you want, you comment. If you disagree, please comment. If you agree, please comment. And this is your brother, Yahya Shabaka. And I only wish the prosperity for our people, not only just the Fuller people who are my heritage and the Amazigh people are my heritage. I want all of Africa to prosper and all of us to live in peace among one another. This is my ambition. I'm an old man now. I want to see this happen. So I'll leave you with those words. Assalamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.